Let's take a look at the cleanup process. This was of great interest to a lot of people the last time I spoke about it. I showed some reference material from the old Don Bluth animation studio and showed different cleanup processes from John Pomeroy from that time. I also have a movie about that, which I think turned out pretty well, where I went into some detail about it. What I want to do is talk about cleanup because good or bad cleanup can make or break a scene. You can rescue a poorly animated scene with it, and you can destroy a well animated scene with it. So on the right side here, I've got Groucho Marx. I forget where I got this. See if I can find the link if I do an image search online. It's definitely a period drawing from some animation studio. So what I want to do is to basically replicate this. I just want to show you where we're approximately going. I'll show you the brush tools that I use and some pitfalls and ways that you can hopefully improve on the rough and tie down things that really need to be tied down. Like, look at that tie there. What's going on there? And there's all kinds of things that we can do. So before I do anything, I'm going to duplicate this image, and I think I'll just close out that one. We have that already saved. Okay, so this is the raw image that I found from the internet. I want to clean it up. Because it's not perfect, let's try to improve it so we have something better to work with. Many things need to be changed. If we go in, it's a JPEG, so you see the disgusting JPEG compression all over it. So let's hit Control M and we can change. Obviously, you can see how nasty it is when I move the slider to here. This vertical stack, this is all this white noise. So let's get rid of that. If I just move this slider to here, you can see it's beginning to fade out. If I go too far, I might eat into the line itself, so let's be careful about that. Let's click OK. I know I was kind of zoomed out. I think that's fine. The cleaner we go, the better. Let's go Control U and take saturation, because I just want to work with black and white. And the other thing I want to do is change the image size, because if we clean this up at 1050, it's decent enough, but I'd like to go at least twice beyond the final resolution I would work at, which is 1080. If you have a fast computer, go to higher even. Depends on your machine. I'm going to just go to 2160 for now. So there are ways of removing the white from the background. You can find those videos on YouTube. What I want to do is show you my quick shortcut for it, and I'm going to demonstrate that. So double click on the background. Just make it an active layer, make a new layer beneath just for the plain white. What I want to do is to have this just be the black line. Now I can go to multiply mode, but that still keeps a big flat image. I don't want that. So what I want is to get rid of all the white. So I'm going to go to my actions panel, and I have already created this character white mask. I'm going to put my action in the notes below so you can import this if you don't want to go through the process of removing the white mask yourself. Again, I'm not going to replicate people's videos that already exist on YouTube or the LinkedIn Learning Library showing you how to do this. So I'm making a white layer beneath just to have like a basic screen below. And then on the top layer, remove white. That's the script that you would want. So if you do import this, this is the one that I use. Hit play. And now we have a layer that is just that line. So the reason why, let's close that now. The reason why I want to do that is so that I can right click. I'll just make it blue so we can see this is our reference layer. Right click, blending options, color overlay, and make it a nice blue. Whatever color works for you. Make it normal. So back in ye good old days, a lot of studios would have done the rough drawings or the tie downs in blue chromacolor pencil and then clean it up with a lead pencil. So this kind of reminds me of that, and it means that as we draw over this, we won't accidentally draw on the wrong layer. That's so easy to do. And you feel like a mug when you do it. So let's call this one just the rough, and we'll call this one the tie down. There are different methods of cleanup that we can do. One approach that you can have would be the kind of approach they had in the 1960s, which I happen to like, which is where they basically work much closer to the animator's drawing. And you see in that period, like construction lines come through. And the cleanup style is very rough because they were able to Xerox the animator's drawings directly for the first time with a Xerox machine. So that's why you get that kind of look. There's a technological reason for that. So what I want to do also is try to replicate some of that. Image, canvas size, and I'm going to make this one 3840 so we have our standard aspect ratio and just fill that entire background. Beauty of this now too, I can change the opacity on the rough if I feel I'm kind of hard to see. It's a bit like a backlight. And hit the brush tool. I have my own custom brushes and presets, so these really help me when it comes to doing a cleanup. Now let me show you a problem that a lot of times we have with cleanup. This is the kind of hard line. Let's switch to black. make sure we're on the, call it the tie down layer. My Wacom tablet is an old one, but it works, and I'll use it until it pops smoke. So you might have a better tablet than this. So we can actually just start doing this. Let me just draw some lines in, and then I'll zoom out. So let me switch off that. So if that's the size he'll be on the screen, you can probably get away with that. But I don't like it. I don't like it one little bit. And one reason why I don't like it is, even if you do like a careful job with it, it's so synthetic. Like, it does seem too clean. It seems like a vector line that you'll see in Flash animation or Toon Boom Harmony. It just doesn't have the same kind of life to it. So let me just delete all of that and find a different line. So I've made my presets with different brushes, and I've got, let's see, Runny Inker. I have Shaggy. So if you wanted to do like a really rough style of cleanup, you might want to have like a larger screen size than this. But you can use brushes like this, not a problem. I would try to avoid the really hard ones. You can do any brush you like depending on the style you want. But let's pick, let's see, this one here. I'll just do like a little section here. So it's 66 opacity, and one problem I have with that is it's too see-through. You end up having to make the stroke twice. I don't like going to 100, so let's go to 88. And that's giving me sort of a nice halfway. So if you wanted to, you could go in and darken it just a little bit. Now you're seeing some chatter and noise. That's deliberate. That's to try to match the kind of texture that a graphite pencil will have when it hits paper. The beauty of that is it's not giving me that brutal, hard, synthetic line. And this little noise, this chatter, which you can change, like you can make your own. But that will give you some sort of sense that this isn't done on a computer. Obviously it is, but it does get a nicer brush look. And you may have your own brushes that are better than this, that's fine. Again, I will put links to my presets and my brushes in the notes, so if you want to use them, you can. Now that's already looking, to me, a bit nicer than the other one. There's a little density right there. Hit E, and we can just delete that out. We can be that picky. There's other points here. Now, let me illustrate something Eric Goldberg points out in his book, and it is very good advice. You shouldn't see this as tracing the blue line, because if you do that, actually I like that line, but if you do that too much, you will actually begin to kill the design. So what you want to do is to find areas that you can improve. So you're trying to just push them a little, not too much, just enough. So we're trying to find things. I don't like these two teeth like lining in like that, so I will actually change that. And let's move that cigar. We're drawing through, hit E to erase. And I think I'm erasing with the hard brush. That's fine. You can erase with any brush you like. Back to the brush tool. And because these inner lines are just gaps between teeth, those lines can be thinner, right? They don't have to be the same thickness as all the other lines. And this is one reason why I like to get away from that vector look, because it tends to make too much of that. So instead of doing this here with this like cross tangent, I'm going to offset them slightly. And here too. So that's giving us the sense of the teeth bending in a little bit. And I might actually do that here as well. The more we differentiate from the key, potentially the riskier it can get. So, you got to be careful with it. Don't go too wild. If it's your own scene, then you have a little more flexibility. There were times at the Bluth studio where I remember one animator had his scene completely wrecked by the cleanup department. Fecal material hit the fan over that. I think I remember which animator it was, and he was not happy. The cleanup artist had misinterpreted what he thought were mistakes by the animator, and had rubbed out, because of the work process, he had rubbed out a lot of the roughs, and the animator had to redo it. Oh God, the pain. So basically having weeks of your work taken away and having to redo it. Horrified. You see the texture of the line. Now, chances are when this is being played on screen, it'll be the size, right? If this is your TV screen and you're set this far back, all those little noisy parts here, they're just texture now. That's it. That's basically the line part sort of taken care of. The rest is going through it and trying to make sure that we're improving the clarity of the drawing. So here's some points here where I did it in mine. You see how the original artist has drawn these eyebrows flat. This is a deliberate choice. He's not doing this because he doesn't understand. Groucho Marx painted his eyebrows on, and they're quite hideous looking when you see them. If you watch any clip from Duck Soup where he's Rufus T. Firefly, for example, it's a great movie. Watch it if you haven't. We can go with that, that's fine, but a part of me just wants, when I see this, let's do the glasses first. So I think on my rough, I just did that, just to give it like a little extra. It doesn't have to be a lot. Let's draw the glasses here as well. There were different cleanup artists who were able to go in more bravely with these big curves. Generally, I can't. So here, for some reason, I had a bit more luck with it. So it's going to depend on the angle I'm drawing at sometimes too. But sometimes you might be more comfortable doing that. And it varied from artist to artist. So here we go, we have the nose coming through there. I don't think we should close off this area here. And again, this is the kind of design decision that back at Bluth, I had a lot of friends in cleanup. They would take that upstairs, talk to Gary Goldman and go, should I leave that open? He'd go, yeah, that looks fine. And then, okay, now I can proceed and do the next 10 keyframes just like that. You don't want to make that design decision and then go show them, because then you've got a lot of drawings that you need to go back and erase. So let's just very lightly put in the eye. And notice when I'm drawing the eye, I'm drawing the full circle around. I'm not doing this. And that was another kind of Bluth/Disney design recommendation, that you draw the entire ellipse or oval shape, whatever, around like that in its entirety. And it creates a nicer, stronger shape. I'm going to draw through here to there and then do a bit of erasing. And one thing is to make sure that I'm holding down the shift key as I rotate the canvas, and that locks it into vertical so I'm not seeing too many jaggies that way. So we should be thinking as we draw, can we just slightly improve the existing shapes? I'm not being too changey here. I think these are okay. Just go a little beyond. So when we do these lines here, be conscious of the fact that's a fold of skin. So I think I got a little blobby there. Another fold here. This time I'm going to fade it out to here, but draw it through. Give it more construction than we see. It's kind of getting a little flat here. So I want to just amplify that just a little bit. Remember that this is a key. There'll be another key and then a bunch of in-betweens. So the weaker the key is, the weaker the in-betweens will be. The in-betweens are always usually weaker than the key. So the key needs to be as strong as possible so it can survive a weaker in-between. So I've just slightly increased the curve shape here. I'm going to close that off. That should be filled. This cheek here is looking very light. If I switch off the blue, put the blue back on, and just do one more pass over that. I could switch the line to 55% and do 2 strokes for every line, and that might give a softer feel. So let's try that actually. Just on the ear, we'll tie it into one small area, make it 55 and the opacity up here. So here's the thing where you see this shape here is parallel, and that could be a feature of the design style of the time, as Grandpa Simpson would say, but we can maybe modernize this a little bit. This might be a more 60s kind of spacing, so the original having been done maybe around the 40s. So, just be aware of that, but that's something that we could certainly do. That's not too drastic. And now I do a second pass over the ear. Let's see what that looks like. And that should give us a density that's a little as dark as the original one pass line, but maybe a little softer. And now let's switch off the under. But I did have to go over twice. So in terms of time, it did slow me down a little bit. So you might feel that line is a nicer look than this line. Could come down to how much, you're comfortable with doing that. So I'm going to go back to 88 and draw through. Don't be afraid to draw through here. I'm not sure what's going to go on in here. I could do this thing on a separate level, but now I've got, at least I know that geometry is fine. So I'm going to then rub that out, because I'm going to just do it all in one layer anyway, just for this one. Now, I'm not sure what they were going for with this this cigar design. I keep thinking that I'd like to see it more like that shape, right? It just seems like a very long, thin design. Maybe just give it a little more variety. Again, the kind of thing, if in a production, I would have to run that by art director or the director or whoever to go, can we change that? If it's, or is the model fixed? But in this case, I'm the director, so I'll decide, just to show an ideal. So I'm making these little shapes here maybe a little too fast. Let me go back there a bit. So we want to follow as close as we can to the original, because that way we don't drift too far either. So that means more of the rough is preserved. So even if I do push this a little bit, we're still sort of able to use the blue line as reference. But I've definitely gone beyond what was there. That's a stronger design. Subtle, but it's definitely a little sharper. When you draw these lines too, the golden rule is you're not drawing lines, you're drawing volumes. So remember that we're drawing lines that are applying to a geometry. So you don't just do that if you want to go for this kind of classic design. So remember that this line is wrapping around the far side like that. Now, you can definitely flatten that, but then you're stylizing it, right? You're moving away from that sense of dimensionality. So the good example of that would be anything by Don Bluth in the late 70s, early 80s, when they were getting very brave with space ace and dragons there with very strong straights against curves. So let's see here. Here is a weak point in the original design where you have a tangent. We've got this here lining up to there. That is really weak. So because it's a lapel, we have the ability to go much beyond that. And it doesn't have to be a lot. That by itself will be enough to detangentify that point. And again, I'm drawing through there, so I know that line is solid. I can rub it out then. And remember back in the day too, we were working on rotating animation discs. So you would rotate and spin them to do so that you would angle the desk so that your line would follow gravity. My hand is falling now with gravity. So this process here, scrubby zoom, I hold down the R key. If you're using Krita, there's a similar rotation tool. All the drawing programs have it now, so we're able to do that. So you can use gravity to help you with the curves. So this is a real sloppy part of the rough here. We have a cuff inside the outer cuff, and it's all getting cluttered here. This is really bad. So let's see if we can correct that. So it comes down to like this violin, the actual shape will be, something like this. But we can probably move this handle more easily than we can move the shirt. So I don't want to move either of them too much if I can help it. So let's just bring the shirt in a little bit and that to here. It's not ideal, but I just don't want to push that too far, because I'm thinking, what if this is like one key of 5 or 6, and if I change it too much, we can start creating serious follow-on problems. So that is so far sort of clear enough. So there'll be a little dark shadow area in there. And again, this hand we can imagine it drawn through. And again, here we're thinking of the form, right? This finger is wrapping around this structure here, so we can just slightly modify that. So what I'm doing here is not tracing. It's certainly using the original layer as a guide, but we're trying to do very subtle things here, like this line here. I've decided to move it up a little bit because I like that line distribution better. And you see, it has like a sort of textury feel to it. You might feel it's too much. You might feel it's just, it's a little too rough. But again, by using different brushes, you can find one that has less scatter on it, or more scatter if you think it's too tight even. So there's another little detail here. If we look at the original, we have this curve here. This is sort of the forearm, and this is the elbow crease. But it's turning into crease, crease, crease. It's like 1, 2, 3. It's very weak. It's like the letter M. We don't really need that. So I'm going to make like a change here to that and do this. And now we have a proper crease. So that's the kind of important decision that you make when you're doing cleanup. One thing now that I look at it again, switch off the lower, it feels like that crease should be a bit thicker. That's a major change that will flow downhill on every following key around it. So, it's the kind of thing you got to mind. Another little detail here, this is a break. So I didn't just draw like a curve. I could have, but there is sort of a break on the original too, about there. And that is a very subtle design way of hinting at structure. So that's the elbow right there. Absolute torture to draw a violin. So let's just do it, get it over with. And again, when we're drawing this curve, remember, it's going to be constructed like this, right? So let's just draw that through so that it matches the top curve. And then we can be confident in the position of that line. Now they've done something on the original where they've really simplified the violin into 2 strings, and that might be fine. But I would suspect that we should probably have, I think, how many strings does a violin have? Yeah, 4. So I'm going to extend that a little bit, and with the drawing tool I can hold down the shift key, at least in Photoshop, and I can extend lines like that, and they look pretty decent. So again, we need to realize what we're looking at here. This is the little tuning knob on the violin. The structure has become a little bit wonky here, so they should probably line up better. The one element that I don't have as much control over is this hand here. That line has to go there. Giving it a little more volume here. And I think we can probably change this line here so that the alternate button seems like it's in that position, so that they sort of line up. And this will also open up a better negative shape. If we look at this is awfully cluttered here. This is all a bit of a tangle. So now the thumb has a little negative space in here. Very important on the keyframe that we have the strongest possible keyframe. All the in-betweens will be weaker than this. Now here's another point where the rough has the luxury of being a little vague on structure, but this has to be painted on cell. This isn't good enough. I can't paint that blue. Where's the different color steps? We have a general idea, but cruel to hand this off to somebody in the cell department. So let's tighten it. this line here, if I can match that a bit better. I'm kind of losing too much here, so let me correct that. So this line should be around here. That was the intention. This is a mess. Like there's different ways of handling that. I'm not sure what that, I think that's a button actually. Oh, it's a button. Okay. So when I was doing my first pass at this, I thought, is this like something like that? So in a time travel machine, if I'm back in the studio at Warner Brothers or whatever, I'll go to the animator and go, what's going on here? And go, it's a button, you dope. And I'll go, oh, it's a button, and I'll walk away feeling like a dope, right? So I just realized that. So let's correct that. I don't like the position of the button though. So who's the real dope here, huh? Not me. So what I'm going to do is open it up a little bit. So just take it down, open up a little gap there, and I think it's a button, right? That's probably what it is. So that kind of gives it like slightly more space. So I assume there's more buttons under this thing. I don't think that's a great design choice because we're going to have the tie flapping around. So because I'm the director, I'm going to go take that button off, and it'll also save the cell painting department a bit of paint. It's not buying us anything. It's just going to be a design detail that'll wriggle around. Again, that's the kind of call you get to make if you're responsible for character design. If you're at the director end of it, you can make people's lives hell by adding all kinds of details that are just going to increase the workload. So again, structure, it's easy to forget as we're working with lines that there's a whole construction underneath this. So this jacket here line, it's going under the chin around here, and this likewise. And then this line here is going all the way around there. So the beauty of working with the computer is, I'm just going to like make a red line here, is we can rough all that out on a different layer if we really want to sort of figure that out. So we have like a reference layer underneath all of that. You know, if you wanted to go that route, you can do that. So you can sort of plan or draw through on a different layer, which would have been harder back on pencil and paper. Now this line is open, so I suspect this is all one color. So here's a good example. I'll use the red line for this too, so we can demonstrate. So we have this trousers, right? So the trousers need structure, so they are going to be wrapping around this kind of lozenge shape like that. And we have like a bit of extra like looser fabric here and here. Let's see what else. We have this weird little thing here that looks like a bum crack. So let's kind of keep with that. That's what they wanted. It's just a big fold. Groucho wore very baggy clothing, and we would have all that kind of... I wish I'd been just drawing this now. It turned out pretty well. So the that line there will just leap through here. We have a little shadow, sort of a shadow hint there and there. So again, we have this three-dimensional lozenge bean. This is the kind of same character stereotypical form that they would use for Goofy. So similar, if you're an animator of the time and you animated Goofy, you're probably getting like weird vibes now of this character looks familiar. The proportions are weirdly similar. So he'll move in a similar way, I would think. Alright, so that's the basic gist of where we're going. Let's switch all that off. So I'm now 40 minutes into the recording, just to give you an idea of how long it takes to do one of these. I have been talking and demonstrating, but when we worked for Bluth, the average time for a cleanup, some more than others, could be like an hour for one key. So, you know, it's a grind, and it shows how long it would take to do a scene that way. And there was also like a sort of, I think it's not an exaggeration to call it an injustice. The best cleanup artists often weren't paid as much because you were footage determined your pay rises, not quality a lot of the time. Sometimes, but more so the people that could crank it out would get, you know, better treatment, certainly from the supervisors. But their work wouldn't be the best, right? Because they were working so fast. So there was this weird tension, really, but yeah, kind of annoyance some people had, and it's understandable. Like the better cleanup people would spend longer at it. A very good friend of mine was one of the top cleanup guys. They loved him in there. Gary was very fond of him, and I won't mention names, but I'm talking about. But yeah, he would just like really put everything into these scenes. It was almost a moral thing with him to make them as good as possible. But when it comes to getting the pay rises, it's like, well, your footage wasn't as good. Well, yeah, no shit, of course it wasn't. He used to keep a folder of, he called it the Hall of Shame, and it was keys that came down that he had to clean up that were the worst that he'd ever seen. And when I ended up being moved into the animation department, I begged him, like, don't put any of my drawings into your Hall of Shame. So he said, no, I haven't. But I remember some of them, and they were, occasionally When we were bored, it's like take out the Hall of Shame and we just take out these key drawings from some of the animators and just laugh at them. Oh dear God, there was one on Thumbelina and the animator who did it was like kind of like a roly-poly guy with like a beard and I can't name it, it's not fair, but it looked just like him, and he was a middle-aged man and he drew Thumbelina and it looked just like him. So the process of trying to save that scene and clean up was pretty difficult. So that was one of my friend's proudest achievements, was making Thumbelina look like Thumbelina again in that one scene. Now, on the original reference here, they didn't have the shoe. It says T-or. That means trace back. And I think that means there's a separate cell there and the foot is to be traced back from that. So previous to this keyframe, it says trace back 50. So I'm not sure if that means it's on keyframe fit. Probably there's a drawing number 50. There's no number on this one. But there's almost certainly a drawing 50. And that means go to drawing 50, get the foot and trace it from that. I'm not doing it because I'm the animator and I'm too good. Well, he's too busy, right? He got other things to do. It's just a silly trace back foot. So that's better because that way the follow artists know where to get the original foot from. I wonder, is that drawing out there somewhere? Or did it end up in a bin? I always wonder about the things that might survive. And there's a circle here, and I think that means there's like sort of a button. I have a dress coat that I bought. There's a clothes shop in Burbank called It's a Wrap. I bought a dress coat in there that was worth hundreds, and I got it for 50. It's a Wrap. If you're in Burbank, go to It's a Wrap. Not the one on Beverly Hills. There's one in Burbank. It's near Porto's bakery shop, but that's still there. It's on Magnolia. And when TV shows and movies wrap, they dump their entire wardrobe department into there. And you don't know what's going to be in there. It just depends on what show is wrapped. I went in there one day and this dress coat was wrapped from season 3 of House, the TV show with Hugh Laurie. So it looked really scary snazzy. So I thought it's worth at least $500 and I got it for $40. So if you want to look like you're really made out of money and you're patient, you go to It's a Wrap. It's a major regret of mine that when I left America, I wanted to go back to LA for one more trip just to hit It's a Wrap, just to stock up on really nice clothes for relatively small amounts of money. And then the stupid COVID thing happened and I couldn't do it. The way the world is now, I don't think I'll get on a plane again if I can help it. So, it's just sad. Okay, so that's basically, we are looking at 45 minutes. With me talking. If I had shut my trap, I could probably have gotten that down. When I look at this out here, this little line catches the eye. So let's just either make it follow the curve, or I think I'll just do that. That's better, right? Yeah, that's better. That's a weird little design here, like there's a horn or something. There might be points too where the line's too thin. That's fine. So we have two choices here. Let me flag a second choice. So let's do tie down. I'm going to just give it like a different color temporarily. I have shortcuts to like color code things really quick. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to do what I didn't want to do before. Go to hard. And this is a really nice trick if you want to combine sort of best of both worlds. So with the hard brush, I'm going to take it down a bit. Let's get it to a much smaller, something like 4 points. Now we can do, and this time I am tracing. This time I want like a second line to match as close as I can the lower one. It's falling a bit out of place there, so let me just rub that back. And I'm just going to do this for the cigar. I'm drifting a little bit, don't like that. So we can go in really close. And if you had an assistant now or somebody who with weaker abilities who's just starting out, this would be a great kind of job to do because it's just line on line at this point. So this is the kind of the line that we would have done. A lot of our line work back when I was going through the system had this kind of like dark, black, sterile look. They had really gotten away from the rougher 1960s style, the Xerox line style. When you look at, say, Little Mermaid, you really see it then. It's just flat. It's kind of a dead line. And I don't like it. I like the rougher line. I think it's messy, but it's got kind of a life to it. And we had many chats in the studio about trying to keep life in the cleanup. And I think the consensus was you can't. Because when you go to that clean line, what I'm doing now, it's just flat. It's like a vector. It might as well be a vector. So I'm just going to do that for that part. So we have now this line here. Look at that by itself. And it's not as dark as it might be. But we do have the solid line. And now we have the rough one. I'm going to make the rough one just black again. And I'll call this one clean up because it sort of is. So I can switch these on and off. Or if I feel like maybe they're fighting too much, I can give them both an opacity, right? So I can make them both 55 and zoom out. Or if that's too much, make that one say 70, 66 or 77. So we can combine these. And if you look at the cigar, you see we're getting a line now. So we're getting a line now that has some of the original scratch beneath it. But it's also got that darker line on top. So if you have the time and you want to grind away, you could certainly be able to combine the best of both. Or if there's like a weak spot as well, you can do that as well. But I would say let's go back to like 100. And I'm going to keep that cleanup just there on 66%. And any other spots too, let's just go in and... So it just means that you're not stuck to one line. You're not going to be working on one flat line unless you want to. You can if you like, but that's fine. So that's the line work. That's how we clean up a drawing. And it's not probably as nice as the original one I did because I was yakking through it, but I'll compare to the original one in a second. So when you are cleaning up a hand-drawn scene, whether it's on paper or on the computer, you start with the keys, right? You do maybe do the first one, the last one, and then the major keys in between. You don't do the in-betweens. You don't start at 1, then go to 2, then 3, then 4. You go to 1, you go to 70, you go to 35. You block in the big ones. And then if you have an assistant, you can give them the breakdowns to clean up. And then your in-betweener would clean up the in-between cleanups. So each time on this process, you're working with this method where you're trying to clean up the original blue line so that you can then paint this thing, because the final goal is to paint it, and you don't want to be painting this particular blue drawing. It's just too rough. Now if your original roughs are better than this, you might be able to paint them. Again, this comes down to the artist and how clean their roughs are, and most aren't. Most are a bit sloppy. Most tend to look like this. Depending on how far you want to go, you could have issues. So again, I have my cleanup layer here, and I'm just looking at it now for any points where I just might want to thicken some of these internal lines, if any of it looks weak, because it is so easy. See here. So you can see now here on the violin, it just gives that line a little bit of body. That would actually be easier to do with paper and pencil. So some of these are just tricks that I use when working with the computer. Here's like a little line gap. This is the kind of thing to watch out for. I'm going to go back to my runny inker, 88%. That should be all the way through into there. Maybe this is just too much there. Thin that out a bit. But again, we're going to be seeing this at this size. So when you are working in here, remember to look at it and test it, and whatever size it's going to be full screen. The other thing that I've done here is the image size is 2160. 2160 was the final export size, the render size. I would like to work double that if the computer's fast enough. So 4320 would be a better drawing size. And let me just do that very quickly. Image size. We start getting very big files though. But the beauty of doing that is, and I'll just do a new layer for this. Like if we are working at that size, it just gives more pixels, right, for the brush. So then when you zoom out, it looks even better. Look at that. It looks crap up close. And then we zoom out and it looks like that. Yeah, so it sort of blends together in a way that's much more naturalistic. So it's whatever you think you can get away with. So again, we have our rough. We have our tie down, which we can kind of work with, and we have our cleanup. So what I'm going to do, actually, I really just like the tie down, so I'm just going to blend that with this layer here. That is bringing in, just fleshing in some of the lighter lines, merge layers, making sure we're on 100%. Yep. Yeah, so we just have one layer. Keep it simple. In the next movie, I'll show you the process of coloring this, at least in Photoshop. So if you do want to get like a nice colored image, how you do it. And it's a process I've done before. It's so simple. So we'll do that next.